It's the future, don't hit the snooze. AI is here giving humans the boost. Team Humans rolling, brains in the game with Dan Turchin. Y'all remember the name. People laying in the mix, no stopping the flow. Better work, better life, yeah, we're ready to go. Robots and humans, a collab, you know. Okay, let's start the show.
This is Dan Turchin from AI and the Future of Work. Welcome to this month's special highlight episode celebrating International Women's Day. As always, we're using 11 Labs to digitize my voice for this compilation. The Real Me reviewed and approved the content and approved the digital twin. International Women's Day is a moment to recognize progress and confront reality. Women remain underrepresented in AI, in executive roles, and in venture-backed leadership. The gap is not about talent. It's about access, encouragement, visibility, and opportunity. In this episode, you'll hear from women who have led through bias, challenged systemic barriers, and reshaped what leadership looks like in the age of AI. Let's begin with Charlene Lee, keynote speaker and strategic advisor. Charlene shares a powerful insight about readiness and risk. She explains why women often wait until they feel 100% qualified before pursuing promotions, launching companies, or stepping into uncertainty. She challenges that instinct directly.
I would say to myself is, don't wait to feel that you are 100% qualified to do whatever it is that you want to do next. And this is especially true for the insecure overachiever and especially for women. There's a lot of data that says women will apply for a promotion or leave their job for a new job or start a company when they feel 100% ready to be able to do this. Whereas men will do it when they're 60% ready. And I think this single statistic is responsible for the reason why women aren't advancing in organizations fast enough. We don't get the encouragement from our allies within organizations. We aren't pushed to go out there and start companies and to think about taking on that uncertainty, because we want everything to be right. And we know what the numbers are stacked against us. Women have a horrible time finding, hiring people, being able to get capital. Why would you do this to yourself? And so as an entrepreneur, I waited until I was in my 40s to start a business. And I married an entrepreneur. So he got all the fun starting business after business after business. And at one point he was stable enough that I could go and start a business. And so to wait until I'm 40, I was doing a lot of entrepreneurial things inside of companies. But, I waited until my 40s when there was a lot at risk. I had 2 young kids at home. To start a company at that point was really hard. And so I think I would have said to myself, and I say this to my son who's in college now, go start your business right out of college. So yeah, he's going to come home. He's going to be living at home. But I feel like, take on those risks, take on the promotions, ask for things before you think you're ready. Because the worst thing that could happen is you don't get the job. The second worst thing is that you do get the job and you're not ready. But that's the only way you're going to get there. Get ready is to actually do the job.
Next, we hear from Daphne Jones, CEO at The Board Curators. Daphne reflects on growing up as the daughter of Jamaican immigrants, navigating racial and gender bias, and overcoming early messages that tried to define her limits. She describes how those messages turn into imposter syndrome and how labels can shape belief systems.
I've served on the board of companies, CEO, and I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother, and I'm a pastor's wife, which sort of makes me a first lady, as they call them there. So it's a lot of things going on in my life. But, Dan, people kind of look at the glory, but they don't know the story, as they say. And I almost didn't make it. I almost wasn't standing or sitting here in this capacity because I was of the color of my skin and my gender and where my mom and dad kind of came from. They were immigrants from Jamaica, came into the United States because this was a land of opportunity, and we were impoverished financially, but they were never poor in spirit. They were never poor in hope and ambition. They were very undereducated. My mom cleaned bedpans in a hospital. My dad was on an assembly line in a company called, I forgot the name of the company, but out in Phoenix, Illinois. We lived in one of the poorest cities in Illinois called Phoenix, Illinois. During that time of growing up, I've suffered, physical, racial abuse as a young girl, what I'll call near career death as a teenager, and I'll tell you why in a moment. And then I've suffered career assault, professional assault as a woman until I retired. And so those that are in my book, and those women around me and people of color, we've all been sown seeds of misdirection. Oh, girls don't do math, and African Americans can't become hedge fund managers, and all those lies that are told to us. And we sort of like ingest those lies, especially when we're young girls like I was. And those seeds of misdirection grow up and they become what I'll call big trees that we now know as imposter syndrome. And so my goal was really to say, because these institutions that we work for and with were not built for women. They weren't built by women. They weren't built for people of color. Maybe the buildings were built by people of color, but the institutions and what they stand for weren't. And so I said, how do we take what I've learned, and I'm always trying to give to other people. My skill finder says I'm a maximizer. And so my goal is always to take something that is at one level, and my thing is to always grow it, whether that's myself. My husband says, you know what, I don't want you to maximize me. Don't teach me how to grow, but I try to maximize everything around me. And so because of that, I said I was made to do this book, and that's sort of what inspired me. When my high school counselor told me, Daphne, I know you want to go to college, but college is not for Black girls. You won't get in. And if you do get in, you won't graduate. You'll probably flunk out. And if you do graduate, no one's going to hire you. And Dan, I didn't realize what he meant by that but eventually I found that this face is not the color of success. It's the face of somebody who cleans your house. It's the face of somebody who cooks for you or watches your children. It's the face that's on a pancake box. It's et cetera. And so it's not the one that is built of success. And so when he told me that, I became a secretary at Women's Day magazine. He said, that's kind of about what you're going to be able to do. And I graduated from high school. And I did take shorthand. I did type, and I was doing that because I thought I was going to take dictation in college and transcribe my notes from my professor. Little did I know that I was going to be in a woman's magazine taking dictation from an assistant editor. So I did that, and I realized that I was lousy at it. The principals inside of the company, and by the way, they were all men, and so funny for a woman's magazine to be run by all men. But anyway, I did that for a little while, and I ended up going to college when I realized that I should not be a secretary. I should have a secretary. So I went on to college, and then I got my undergraduate degree in 3 years instead of 4, and I got my MBA in 1 year instead of 2. All the while in the back of my mind, he's telling me, you're not a college person. You're just a secretary. You're just a secretary. And the word just doesn't mean that secretaries are not a good thing to be. It's that he put a limit on me, Dan, and he put a label on me. And he said, this is all you're going to be, is a secretary. So whether he had said I was only going to be a salesperson or I'm only going to be a lawyer, it doesn't matter. You can't tell me what my narrative is going to be. I'm going to tell me what my narrative should be based on my passion and my purpose.
Our next guest is Patty Hatter, President and COO at Opsera, and formerly Chief Customer Officer at Palo Alto Networks. Patty speaks directly to technical women who are trained to be perfect, precise, and cautious. She explains why those traits helped early in their careers, but can later become constraints.
So if you're coaching, let's say, the next generation of aspiring, female entrepreneurs, technologists, execs, et cetera, and they're looking to you as a role model, right? You've achieved so much, starting with, multiple engineering degrees, et cetera. What do you tell them in the face of the experiences that they might be having where they feel like the deck is stacked against them?
Take risks. If you stay in a box, you'll live in a box. If that's, you know what I mean. But women, so now to speak to the females that are listening, especially the technical females, and I had to get this out of my own head, so I believe I speak on behalf of a lot of the technical female community. We're the ones that had to double check our homework. We're, had to be an A, had to be perfect, stay in a lane. This is how we got our degrees, and this is how we, proceeded through all those early years to excel. And those characteristics were great then. They will not get you where you want to be, where you need to be, where you can be now. So you have to figure out how to reprogram your brain to let that go. And I speak to a lot of technical female groups, and kind of at the manager director level, I see it. I just want to shake them when we could all meet in person. Shake them. It's like, get out of your cube, get out of your office. You've got to meet people. Reviewing that document one more time is not going to get anyone anywhere. It's not going to get you anywhere. You've got to meet people. You've got to broaden your horizons. You've got to get different experiences. You've got to talk to customers. You've got to develop your worldview and take risks. Have a perspective and feel comfortable in talking about it. Even when people disagree, that's fine. People don't need to agree with you all the time, but you need to have a point of view. You need to have a point of view, because that's what people will associate you with. Does this woman, person, whoever, did they have a vision, a compelling view that I want to follow? And you want to develop that so you get a followership of people that are like, I understand what she's saying. I think she can get us there. You want to be that person, and you're not going to be that person by staying in the same type of role, having the same type of experience, not meeting other people. Folks look at my background, they're like, Patty, are you schizophrenic? You have been all over the place. Like, I love it. I find it entertaining, and that's, you want to take roles that you find are amusing, and you'll learn, and there's something different. But I find with each role, I've gotten a very different perspective, and it's given me the confidence to say, I have a point of view, whether it's, how different geographies work, how different technologies work, how different personas within enterprise work together or not, or customers' needs, what their primary issues are, where the buying money is. You want to follow the money on when you're trying to sell something or position something. So I really encourage females, and sometimes it's against, especially the technical females, against our nature, because we want to stay in a box and double check our work, but you have to get out. You have to get out. And it's, since we were talking about the shelter in place and our current situation, this current situation makes it easy for our female community that has a tendency, and again, I would put myself in this category. I have to actively break myself of this habit every day to just, I'll stay indoors, I'll keep doing my work, everybody will recognize the great work that I'm doing, and you have to get out. And so, I encourage any female that's listening, you have to consciously go outside your comfort zone. You have to consciously seek new input, seek different experiences, seek different types of roles. Things that you find like frightening or scary, that's all good. That's all good. Take a risk. What is the worst that happens? You learn something, and you move on to the next role.
Next, Mona Sabeh, SVP at GCG, and award-winning author of Sail to Scale. Mona addresses a structural challenge in tech. She explains how hiring decisions often rely on brand signals like company names, titles, or funding history. Those signals historically favor men. When leaders rely on brand over skills, learning ability, and potential, they reinforce bias. There's a whole aspect of Mona that we didn't get to yet, and that's mentioned in the opener. Deep background and a passion that you have for empowering women who are aspiring to exec level roles in tech. Can you talk to us about the current state of diversity in hiring and why, after all these years, we still struggle with this in tech, and make it actionable? What's your advice to both the leaders that you coach, but also to the founders who may just have a blind spot because we're not making enough progress, or we're not making the right progress fast enough?
I would say there's so many things, and I could go on for an entire other half an hour on this point. But if I was going to distill it to, again, one thing that might go to the jugular, we are very much a culture that relies on brand for decision makings. We talk about this in the book a little bit too. So, I joke around that you could have been in custodial services at Google, but as long as you have Google on your resume, you'll probably get an interview. And that's unfair and not completely true, but, an example of the brand. The fact is that because of our history, we've had most people who have brands, whether the brand is the title, or the brand is the company, or the brand is the amount of dollars that they managed to raise, from a VC, that brand has been held largely still today by men, not by women. So when you're interviewing, and if brand is something that is unconsciously affecting your decision, you're going to lean towards the men and that are applying for your roles more than the women. And so being able to change that perspective, because quite honestly, we've hired in the past, and I've made as a leader the mistake in the past of hiring a lot of people because they've been, a senior level person at Salesforce. And so I thought that they would be able to really just come in and take up the mantle immediately. And yet, usually when you have those brands, sometimes it's because you came into a well-greased, well-operating company, and you just continued to make it so, which is very different from growing, scaling, starting, allowing for transitions to happen and leading them through change management. So brands haven't always worked out, and I'm pretty confident that any of your listeners will have an experience where they've relied on a brand and it hasn't worked out. So being able to move away from the brands and actually look for the skill sets, the talent, the ability to learn, all the things that we say are important in leadership, but we don't necessarily interview for, I think would be a critical way to start driving the change. I spend most of my time working to build strong communities of women, largely because women also need to help themselves a lot. We need to support each other more than we have in the past. I like to say things like men will recommend another man that they know for a role because they golfed with them. Women will not recommend another woman for a role unless they've worked with them and have absolutely 100% sure know that they can succeed in that role. And so we don't give ourselves enough opportunities either. So I think it comes from both directions. It's not something that you can do or you can solve for just through one direction. I think everybody needs to play their part and change how they approach diversity in tech.
Finally, we turn to Tess Posner, founder of AI for All. Tess highlights the diversity crisis in AI. Access to computer science education remains uneven, even in regions known for technology leadership. Her message to young women and underrepresented communities is direct. AI will shape every field. These systems need your voice and your perspective.
I've been working on education and technology and really where that intersects with equity issues and access issues in the economy. And one of the biggest trends that we're seeing right now is with artificial intelligence, which many call the driver of the fourth industrial revolution. It's growing at an accelerating rate, and people are using it in their everyday lives in often invisible ways. And this technology is really at the beginning of how it's going to change our lives and the economy and pretty much every industry. At the same time, we see globally there's a diversity crisis in AI, and only 14% of AI practitioners are women globally. And that's actually even worse than what you see in the tech sector more broadly. So with such a critical technology that's going to change people's lives and is being used in things like hiring, credit scoring and financial access, criminal risk assessment, it can't just be developed by a few and shaped by a few. It has to be developed by people that represent those that would be using it. And I think that's really critical for the future of AI and ensuring that there's a good outcome with the technology and it can live up to its potential. So our mission at AI for All is to really ensure this more inclusive approach and try to address this diversity inclusion crisis in the field.
One of the things I love about the mission, just your passion and the mission of AI for All, is that you're trying to give access to these important curricula or topics to people who might not realize that they have access to them or don't have access to them. The fact is, essentially, the entire planet does not have the privilege like you and I have to, the kinds of technologies. And so a lot of, I think, the kinds of communities that you target at AI for All are ones, even, maybe like my daughters growing up in the cradle of Silicon Valley, but still they might be likely to say, that education is for someone else. It's for people who don't look like me, or they're ... And they're the ones who, unfortunately, I could be weaponized against them if we don't take the opportunity to embrace it and make them feel like it is for all. What do you say to maybe girls or certainly underrepresented minorities who feel like, this AI revolution is something that they don't get to participate in?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's such a good point, and I just want to put some numbers to it. So if you look at CS for All data, only 60% of high schools in the US actually teach computer science. And in California, yeah, you and I are right in Silicon Valley, but in California, the birthplace of Silicon Valley and so much of this technology, only 50% of the schools offer it. And, in a lot of ways, like that foundational computer science is where students would get exposure to this and really understand like what it takes to get into the field and opportunities there, and start to build some of those math and skill sets that are important and foundational for going into this path in the future. So the access piece is huge. Also think, like we can see that even though 60% of public high schools offer computer science, only 32% of students who took these classes are young women. So even within that, there are gaps for specific populations within who even has access, right? So I think that's a huge problem. But what I would say to those young people who are thinking about this is these systems, these fields need your voice, and they need your perspectives, because ultimately we are shaping this world together. Nobody has the answers for what will happen in the future. People might say they do, but they don't. And, the young people of today, anyone listening who is kind of growing up and graduating in this world, AI is going to be one of the most important forces that will impact every field and every part of our lives. And it needs people like you to help shape it. And maybe that doesn't mean you become an AI technologist, but it might mean that if you're going into healthcare, how does that work? Like, what pieces of the healthcare system are going to be outsourced to AI, and how can you ask the right questions and think critically about that? So I think that it's up to everybody to ask these questions, because it affects all of us and it will affect the future generations.
Every guest in this episode points to the same truth. Talent is everywhere. Opportunity is not. Progress requires risk. It requires visibility. It requires leaders who hire for skill and who open doors wider than they found them. International Women's Day is not only about celebration, it is about responsibility and action. If any of these insights resonated with you, listen to the full episodes. Links are in today's show notes. And if you know someone who needs to hear this conversation, share this episode with them or leave a comment with your perspective. Thanks for listening to this International Women's Day special edition of AI and the Future of Work. Until next time, keep leading, keep learning, and keep building a future where opportunity knows no boundaries.
Yo, it's the end of the show, time to power it down. AI's the sis, but humans wear the crown. Team Human in the house, got the vibe so clever. Dan Turchin from People Rain, making us better. We learned about AI for humans. We're ready to conquer the future, that's all for now. See you next time.